We arrived at the Grand Hall and found everyone having food. Luna Sadie and Alpha Sam talked with Adrain and Tim, while my mother and Gwen sat with Madeline. "Come on," Sasha murmured, walking over to the opposite side of them. We both sat just when an Omega placed a plate of food before me. The smell was amazing. I was starving and started to eat when I felt someone's eyes on me. I looked up to see my mother and Madeline staring at me. "What?" I asked, taking a bite out of the burger on my plate. "Damn, that tastes nice." Lately, I have eaten more than I did back in my old pack since it was up to me alone to eat, since Dad was away a lot. I only knew how to make mac and cheese or tuna bake, but it was never fancy. "How are you feeling now, honey?" Mum asked, making me look at her. She looked concerned. "I came to check on you with Madeline, but Sasha told us you were sleeping, so we thought we would leave and set you a plate when you came down." I kept my eyes on her for a moment, knowing she wanted to know the truth. Lila sighed. "Just tell her something. She needs us to be okay." "I'm okay," I said with a small smile. "I just needed to get out of there. It got too overwhelming and—" I said, but stopped when I realized the hall was silent. They were listening to me. My cheeks burned, and I looked at my uncle. His eyes were full of something, but it was hard to tell. "I'm fine, honestly." My uncle looked at me. "Why didn't you tell us all that in there before, especially about the scar that Aiden did to you? Why would he ask me this in front of everyone?" Anger rippled through me while I stared at him. "What scar?" Madeline asked, making me look at her. She looked tense at the question, which was weird. I stared at her for a moment, but let out a sigh. Aiden stabbed me with a pair of scissors when I wouldn't do something for Chloe. Madeline's eyes widened, but I looked back at my uncle with a glare. "As for not telling you about everything beforehand," I said, my head to the side as Lyra came closer to the surface to let herself be known. Some eyes widen, but I don't care, and continue. "Most of my scars are from my father. A few pack members have only hurt me, and Aiden isn't the only one." I let my words linger momentarily before something registered with me, and I spoke out. Thinking about it, every time another pack member injured me, Chloe was always there, I said, furrowing my brows. It was like her fun. Everyone stared at me. Most of them looked bewildered. I glanced around until my eyes met Madeline, who looked at me somewhat out of sorts. "I am so sorry." Well, that wasn't what I was expecting from her. I stared at her, confused. "It's not your fault, and you weren't there, and besides, they aren't your family." The corners of my lips curl up, trying to give her a reassuring smile. I knew I had to say something. Everyone seemed worried about me, and they didn't need to be. "Seriously, I am fine." My eyes went to each person as I spoke. I must let it all come out, as I feel much better. Frowning, I looked at everyone. I can't believe I'm going to admit this, but I think I need to have it out with Aiden and the others. Everyone looked at one another, but there was some understanding between my words, especially from my uncle. Confronting Aiden and all my so-called friends who helped with what happened to me, they needed to know that actions have consequences, and I wasn't going to let it slip by. I knew I had a long way to go in feeling more confident about seeing them all again, especially Aiden. Every part of me wanted them to think I was dead and move on, but there was a massive part of me that wanted to do this for myself. I could never move past what they did unless they saw me, and I didn't know when that would happen. "Well, that's good to know," my uncle said, pulling me from my thoughts, and I looked back at him while he grinned. "When you left the office, we talked and devised a plan, and you will be part of it." That sounded ominous. "What plan?" "What plan?" Sasha and I said together, which made us look at each other and let out a little laugh. My uncle explained what they came up with. Alpha Robert played a major role in coming up with most of it, but my mum and he also brainstormed another side that was more tailored to me. The one part I heard was that we would help the Shadow Creek train, which is laughable. We would only go when Josephine returns to the pack since she has been gone for the last few weeks. That's weird. Where could she have gone? Lyra's words hung in the air while my uncle continued telling me the plan. No one will know we are coming until the last minute, since they haven't heard from her or whoever they are working with. While my uncle spoke, I continued eating until he told me I would help them with the training. I had to admit, I never thought you could choke on a burger until then. I still need more training, so I don't know how that will work. I was going with a few warriors, my mother, Gwen, and Sasha, while some other pack members stayed in the motel halfway from the pack house, which I assume is Troy's motel. We are to wait and see if rogues come to attack, and hopefully Chloe's brothers will turn up too. Despite my plans, worry consumed me. There was no way I could pull anything off. Mia, I think you should have it out with the young alpha too, my uncle said, pulling me from my thoughts. You need to show and tell him everything, also the rest of that stupid pack. Even leave that pack, and then we can make you an honorable pack member here. I sighed, but said nothing. The mere thought of talking to Aiden scared me, but to leave that pack, before all this happened, loved ones filled that pack with memories. We won't be going until you are ready, Lyra said, chiming into the conversation. I knew she had my back. Honey, are you okay? My mother asked, reaching her hand over and placing it on mine. I stared at her momentarily before giving her a small smile. I'm okay, but what will happen to the rest of the pack, and Madeline too? I asked, looking at my uncle. Surely he wasn't going to send her back there, not with what had happened. My uncle's eyes softened. Madeline won't be coming with us. I am sending her away. Well, Cousin Adam will watch over Luna, Sadie, Ryland, and Madeline in Spain until this all blows over. He smiled. They will leave at the end of the week. I turned to Madeline, who seemed shocked. I have never been to Spain before, and I have never been on an airplane. I smiled. Neither have I. You will have to tell me when you get back. Madeline nodded and smiled. My eyes moved to my uncle, who grinned while he continued. At least that is all sorted. As for me, I will join you. He what? Coming with us? Who would look after the pack? The questions that had formed in my head brought Lyra closer, as my uncle sensed where my head was going and explained more to me. I will only come for a few days or even a week after you and the rest leave. Your grandfather will look after the pack in my absence. What the hell? What did he mean by grandfather? I had no other relative other than Ryland, my little brother. I looked at my mother, bewildered. Grandfather? I have a grandfather. When were you? I'm sorry, Mia, she said, her eyes glistening. With everything that has been happening, we forgot to mention then. They know you are here and have stayed until you were ready to meet them. My eyes stayed on her while she looked over at my uncle and then back at me. You already met them before you came here, she said. I racked my mind about what she was on about, knowing I hadn't met anyone else, no one, symbolizing family. The cafe when we came here, Sasha said, making me look at her while my eyes widened. The two old people, they were my grandparents. Why didn't they say anything? After food, I'm taking you down to the cafe to meet your grandparents, Mum exclaimed. But she turned to Sasha. You are going to help Madeline pack for her trip. Sasha looked a little glum. Okay, she said, looking toward Madeline, who I could sense tense. Sorry for being... Madeline shook her head and smiled. There is no need to apologize, but I appreciate the help. Thank you. Everyone resumed talking, but my mind raced over everything that had been said. My mind was overloaded with the plan and finding out about my grandparents. Lyra seemed to like the idea of having grandparents, and so did I. I had some understanding of why they didn't come and introduce themselves since I was recovering and even started training. Despite the excitement, fear, and nervousness also overwhelmed me. But a slight part of me wondered if they would like me. Aiden. Nothing was going right. I had just returned from training, which went well until one of the pack members got injured. I helped and even got the medical attention. I made everyone else carry on until it was time to finish. Afterward, I went into the office to do some work my father had shown me, only I was left trying to make sense of the work my father had entrusted me with over the last few months. He had shown me what to do, but there were some parts that we never covered. Sighing, I got back to work only to jump slightly at the door slammed outside. Looking up, I knew it had to be my father since he was the only one who had left. Keeping my eyes focused down at the paperwork I had in front of me, I heard his footsteps till the office door swung open. I looked up to see my father walking in, but stopped when he saw me. His eyes were blank, but there was a tense feeling that came in through the door. A shiver rippled through me. The look he gave me was the one he gave me as a child when I did something wrong. What the hell did I do now? I had done nothing untoward to any pack members. I have done what I thought was right. Unless someone said something to him about what happened at training, then I have no clue why he was looking at me like that. I watched my father for a moment till he moved away from the door and headed toward the couch at the side. He looked away and sat down, staring ahead until he let out a low growl. "Aiden, I want some answers from you." His voice was thick with coldness. The hairs on my arms rose, but I said nothing. My father turned to face me with a glare. "Did you ever harm Mia?" Hearing her name coming from my father's mouth was foreign, but it was also laced with something that I couldn't put my finger on. Keeping my eyes on him, I didn't know what he meant. After a few moments, his eyes glazed over to mind link someone and came back to me with the same icy glare. Clearing my throat, I moved uncomfortably in the chair. "What do you mean?" I start to say, but a low growl rumbled through him. "Don't answer the question with another. Answer it. Did you harm Maya? Or better yet, do you know who did?" I stared at him, trying to figure out what to say to him. I didn't want to tell him who was involved. "They are my friends." "I don't know what you are on about." I lied, keeping my eyes on him. His face turned stony. I watched him move up on the couch. "Why are you asking about Mia? And who would have hurt her?" My father stared for a moment before he spoke. "It has come to light when I was away that Mia was treated badly by pack members. I wanted to know who did it so I could deal with the matter." "Who would have told him?" I said nothing. Chloe was the main one and my friend. I may have acted out at the beginning, at some things she did, but that was in the past, not for this year at least. A low growl rumbled in my head from my wolf, which made me look back at him. He was not giving me the same look as my father. I go to open my mouth, but the damn mutt places a block up. What the hell was that all about? Why was he acting like this now? When everything went down around Mia, my wolf was never around. He went nuts when he saw firsthand what Chloe did and wanted to come out to protect Mia, but I held him back. I told him she deserved what was happening since she was mean to Chloe. There was also gossip floating around about David, his best friend, but there was no proof that he ever did anything to her. The only thing that was stopping me from telling the truth was everything coming to light with Chloe and her mum, mainly the rogue situation. I was now wondering if what she was told about Mia in the past was true. Everything was up in the air surrounding her, and I needed to figure out what was going on. But I didn't want to tell my father what I had found out. "Are you going to tell me?" My father's voice interrupted my thoughts, making me look back at him. Staring at him, I knew I had to say something. I heard rumors. My father tensed, but it was clear he didn't like what he was hearing. Did he want me to confess to something? "What rumors?" "Well, there have been rumors about a few pack members, but there were no names." My father said nothing, only glared. I have never lied to him before. The silence in the room was deafening, but my father let out a sigh and moved from the couch. "Well, since you don't know the names of the people who did it, then I will have to investigate myself." Keeping my mouth shut, I watched my father move toward me and stop close to the desk. My eyes never left his. "You can leave now, and I will finish up here." I gave him a nod and moved out of the chair. His eyes stayed on me till I got to the door. "Aiden," he said, making me stop and look up at him. "Words of others will be enough for me to take action." I nodded, but he wasn't done. "If I find out if you or any of your friends were involved, you will be in the cells for a month and will not become an alpha until I see fit, which could be till you turn 29. My stomach churned at his words while anger filled me. He couldn't do this to me. I was his son. It was my right to take over. I said nothing to his words, only looked at him. Everything in the past will come back to bite me on my ass, but I needed to step up as his son or lose everything I have worked all my life for. Turning back to the door, I heard movements that indicated that my father was moving, which I bet was to his desk. "And Aiden, leave that girl Chloe alone. If I find you and her together, I will make your life more unbearable. Do you understand?" I didn't bother looking back. I knew if I did, he would see right through me. I needed to leave and talk to Lee and Darren. I needed to tell them what just happened. Opening the door, I walked out and opened a mind link to my friends. Meet me in my room in the next half hour. I didn't give them a chance to respond as I headed to my room. A plan was forming, something that would help me and my friends, but I needed them involved. I needed to have them help me. Alpha Robert. Once the door closed, I let out a growl. I knew Aiden was lying. He could never lie to me, but he did today. I knew why he wouldn't tell me who it was. He was protecting his friends. Part of me was stunned he mentioned a few pack members, but not Chloe. Everything in me was telling me to have it out with him, but during the drive back, even though I was going to have it out with him, I knew I would have to find proof about all the abuse Mia received here. Gwen, Alpha Sam's pack member who had been here, may have some, but I wanted to wait for a little while before asking her for what she had. Sinking into my chair, I felt my wolf come closer and growl. Our pup lied to us. We need to punish him for what he did. I know, but we need to wait, my wolf huffed. Why? He should be... I have an idea. The force cut my wolf off and made me look back at him. His eyes bore back into mine, trying to search what I was going to say next. Letting out a sigh, I started to tell him what I had in mind. I will punish him soon, just not right now. Keeping my eyes on him, I started to explain more. First thing I am going to do is gather more evidence about the matter, even asking the woman who came here for her proof. I believe Aiden and his friends were the only culprits involved, but I want to make sure. That will intel looking into cameras for more information. My wolf didn't say anything or even batter an eyelid, only stared. I could tell he wanted to know more, so I continued. We will gather what we can and even back off with Aiden doing more of the role of Alpha till we know the truth. My wolf nodded. What the others? They can't go without punishment. That was true, and then an idea came to mind. We can make them do jobs around the pack house. That got my wolf howling with laughter and even mentioned placing Aiden too in with them. He needed to learn responsibility of his actions, and what better way than to clean the gym after everyone has used it. What else? I stared at my wolf. We can think about more as the time goes on, but at the moment we need to find out about Josephine and where she is. My wolf nodded. Looking back, I opened a mind link to Josephine, but nothing went through. I was being blocked, which wasn't at all surprising after what we learned at Alpha Sam. I opened another mind link to a guard and asked him to send Chloe to see me. The mere thought of her being here with me was making my anger boil. What she had done to Mia was never tolerable here, but due to my behavior, I let everything slip past. I wasn't the Alpha Mia had needed me to be, but I could sure as hell make it up to her. After a few moments of getting myself ready, a knock came at the door and it opened. Chloe. She walked into my office like she owned it. Alpha, she said, walking further in. Anger rippled through me due to the disrespect and the nerve of this she-wolf. Chloe, I didn't ask you to come in. You never come into my office without an invitation, do you understand? My voice sounded firm and loud. What I told her clearly shocked her as she stopped and stared at me. But after a few seconds, she cleared her throat and spoke. I am so sorry, Alpha. I wasn't thinking. I was told to come to the office because the Alpha wanted to see me and I was expecting Aiden. I stared at her and said nothing. That was something to keep an eye on. She was clearly misinformed. Well, Aiden is not the Alpha yet. I still am, so show respect when you are around me. Chloe gave a nod and looked at her hands which were held together in front of her. Knowing I had to get this over with, I spoke again. Chloe, I was wondering where your mother was. I have been looking for her all morning. My wolf huffed, but I ignored him. He knew I was trying to get information out of her. You were looking for my mother, Alpha? She asked, sounding surprised. Yes, I am. There was no need to say anything else. Chloe stared at me for a moment before she spoke again. Could I ask why, Alpha? A low growl rumbled, making her tense. No, you may not. Chloe's eyes widened while I continued. I wanted to know why she hasn't been located in the pack grounds. Where has she gone? Chloe said nothing, so I thought I'd throw her a bone to see if it would work. When I was told she was gone, I was getting concerned. Chloe bit her lip and her face changed, giving me a look I hadn't known. You were concerned about my mum. She would be so happy to hear that. Her words echoed in my head when something registers. The countless times her mother tried to comfort me in my grieving. I never paid any note to it, but now, maybe I could use it to my advantage. Well, please tell her to come and see me when she is back. I would like to have a word with her. The corners of my lips curled up slightly, indicating a smile, but it wasn't the smile she would think. I needed her to believe in it since I needed her to get her mother back. Chloe nodded. Is there anything else, Alpha? I shook my head. No. You may leave now. Chloe smiled and went to leave, but stopped just by the door. Alpha, do you know where Aiden is? I haven't seen him for a few days. He told me he would be here, but clearly he is not. I shrugged. He left before I came here. Lying was now coming a natural thing to me, but it was only the beginning when it comes to her and her mother. I need to know what the hell is going on and why the hell rogues are close by. Chloe left the room, while I opened a mind link to one of the guards I knew I could trust. We had been friends since we were children, and our mates were friends too. Sadness loomed over the mere thought of that about our mates, but I pushed it further down. I couldn't think of her, not now, not after what Emma had told me. Gavin, can you do me a favor? Sure thing, old friend. Anything. I need you to follow Chloe for a few days. I need to find out if she is in touch with her mother. Sure, he said, sounding concerned. But why, may I ask? I let out a sigh. There has been some developments lately, and I need answers. It is regarding the fire, he said, cutting me off, which usually would infuriate me if it was someone else. But when it came to Gavin, he knew me too damn well. Yeah, I said, knowing I was lying to him. I needed to know if I could trust him. I wanted to see what he would come back with and see if he finds out what Alpha Sam's pack knew. If he did, I would tell him what I know, and then at least I would have someone who will help me. Okay, I will follow her now. She just left the pack house. Follow her, but make sure she doesn't see you. Sure thing, he said, and closed the mind link. Hopefully I can find something out and where the hell these two women go. Looking around the office, I knew I had to do one thing, and that was to find private and direct line to Alpha Sam. I knew I had a spare phone with a new number that would work perfectly. We only need to talk about the upcoming plans to find out what the hell is going on around here. MIA. After eating and helping Madeline pack, I changed into a summer dress and flats to look good when I met my grandparents. I felt so out of place when it came to all of this. The dress I chose covered most of my scars, which was a blessing. While packing, I kept quiet while Madeline and Sasha talked about things. They were doing it just to keep me from the quietness that would have invaded the room. I was thankful for that. Lila was quiet too, even though I could sense she wanted to talk. She knew me too well not to, especially when I needed to come to terms with everything. Once we were all done, we headed back down the stairs. As I got to the bottom, I found my mother and Ryland waiting. They both looked at me and smiled. You look beautiful, Mia, Ryland said, running up to me. He stretched his arm out and wrapped me in a hug. Warmth spread through me. I still haven't spent much time with him since we have been dealing with things with the pack, but I wanted to change all that soon. Ryland moves back and lets go of me while still smiling. Today, you get to meet our grandparents, he said excitedly. Something about his excitement made me want to know them more, which was scary in itself. I looked up to see Mum smiling and tears forming. I frowned, wondering what was making her act like this. Mum shook her head. These are happy tears. Do you know how long I have wanted to see my children like this? I said nothing but smiled at her. Knowing what she meant, I guess I wouldn't know. She left before we could meet. We all move away and head out of the pack house where a car awaits us. We all jump in where a driver starts the car and drives away slowly. I can't help but look outside the window and realize there is so much more I need to see of the pack. I have been staying where my uncle can see me or Mum will take me, nowhere further than the pack house. After a while, we pulled up to the cafe that Sasha and I had gone to before coming to the pack house. The car stops and I get out, only to be greeted by the lady I saw the first time, Sarah. I said nothing while Mum went up to her and hugged her. Her eyes met mine, and the corners of her lips curled up into a smile. Well, I can't believe it. We get to finally meet you, Mia. Mia? Her voice sounded soft and full of emotion. but Ryland ran around the car and wrapped his arms around her. "Hello, Granny," he said, which makes her laugh. He lets go, and while my grandmother holds out her hand to him, he takes it with a happy smile. Ryland opened the door, but my grandmother looked at me before they headed in. "Come, you will have to meet your grandfather." I watched them walk inside while my eyes darted inside the cafe where an older man was waiting. His eyes were on me, but he soon turned his attention to Ryland and Sarah. "They have waited for 17 years to see you, Mia," Mum said, stepping outside. I looked at her for a moment. Lila moved closer to see everything. "They are happy to meet you, Mia." I said nothing. "I wish they could have met you sooner," Mum whispered, which caught me off guard. I stared back at her. Part of me wanted to blame my father for all this. If he hadn't hurt her, maybe we would have been a happy family. Taking a breath, I walked toward my mum, and we headed inside. Once inside the cafe, I stopped far from the door and looked around. Since I was keeping my head down, I never saw what the cafe was like when I was there before. It looked homey for a place where everyone came to eat. My eyes darted until it landed on the door I entered, which had the sign turned over to closed. Part of me wondered if they did this for me. Looking around, I found my grandmother and Ryland behind the counter, grabbing a plate full of cookies and other cakes. I couldn't help but smile. Ryland took the plate and placed it on a table that was already laid out. Ryland looked up and smiled at me. "Come and sit, Mum and Mia. We can have cakes and tea." He sounded excited. My eyes darted to Sarah, who was still behind the counter with a smile. But then I spotted someone else, the older man. He was behind her. His eyes were trained on me. Something about him made me know he was my grandfather. Uncle Sam looks just like him, just from his eyes. But the older man had gray hair and the exact color of his eyes. He gave me a warm smile. I watched as Sarah walked away from the counter and over to the table, where my mum and brother were now sitting. I heard movements and looked back to see the man standing not too far from me with his hand held out to me. "It is finally nice to meet you, Mia," he said with a smile. "I'm your grandfather, Gerald." I smiled and shook his hand. "It is nice to meet you both finally. I am sorry I haven't been down here. I didn't know who you were till earlier." My grandfather laughed. "It's okay, dear. We're just happy to meet you finally." He moved slightly and motioned to the table where everyone was sitting. Ryland was already eating cake while Mum and Sarah looked at us. "Let's have some food before Ryland eats it all." "Hey!" Ryland exclaimed, which only made us all laugh. "I'm a growing boy." I laughed and walked over to where my mother had left the empty seat. I sat down opposite my grandfather. My eyes moved to my mum and Sarah. Looking at them, they looked just like my grandfather and Uncle Sam. My mother was the spit of her. They both look gorgeous. Her hair is also gray but long, but her brown eyes show her true features more, which are bright, especially when she smiles. We all started to eat when my grandfather asked me a question. "So, how are you finding Dark Forest Pack? I hope all members are treating you well." I nodded. "I haven't met many of the pack members, but the ones I have met have been nice to me, and I love it here." "Can I get some milk?" Ryland asked loudly before my grandfather could say anything else. "Sure, be careful, young man," Sarah said, smiling at me. "I am so happy to hear you are settling in." I smiled. I was about to open my mouth when a loud smash came from where Ryland was. We all looked over and found Ryland covered in milk and tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I wanted a drink." My mother moved from the table just as his tears fell. "I will sort him out. Do you have any clothes that he could change into?" Mum looked at Sarah, who nodded. They both got up and left to deal with Ryland while leaving me with my grandfather. When they left, my grandfather looked at me and smiled. "I bet you find this all too weird. I mean, you didn't know you had another family around." I looked at him and shook my head. "No, I didn't. Honestly, I'm freaked out by it all, as I don't know what to say." I stared at him for a moment before I spoke again. I was trying to control myself. "I'm happy I got more family, but I always thought it was just my parents and me. But when Mum left, it was just my father and me. At the mention of my father, a growl slipped through my grandfather's lips. "That man should never be mentioned in front of me. I hate him for what he did to both you and your mother. He tore my family apart, and that will never be forgiven in my eyes." MIA. Tension in the air was thick after what he said, which made Lila come closer to the surface. He hates our dad for everything. I said nothing but kept my eyes on him until I heard someone coming closer to the table. We don't need to talk about him, my grandmother said, which made me look at her and then at my grandfather, who shook his head. I know he did some horrible things to you. I don't know the extent of it all, but I would like to know when you can trust me. I looked back at him. I never had anyone be direct towards me, especially about my past with the abuse from my father. I don't like talking about it, I said, slightly irritated about this whole thing. The way he said those words made me wonder if he did the same to my mum. I was starting to feel pissed at the mere thought of going through it all, especially with a man I had only just learned about and just met. I was starting to hate how people were beginning to treat me like a weakling. Lyra growled in my head. You are no weakling. I said nothing, but stared. My grandfather took a breath while my grandmother comforted him. His eyes were softened when he recovered. I know, he said, but I shook my head and cut him off. I'm sorry, but I don't want to talk about him or anything in the past. I have enough scars on my body to remind me of what happened, and I don't want to relive them by going through them all the time when someone wants to know what happened to me. I stood up and looked at him until I heard another noise. I looked to see my mother staring back at me, her face full of pity and guilt. This is the problem. Everyone thinks I need it, but I don't. I need people to treat me like a human or werewolf, but if they are going to bring up my past just to feel pity for me, then they are surely mistaken. Lyra growled, wanting to get out. Anger was taking over me, and I knew I needed to leave before I said something I would regret later on. I went to leave, but a hand grabbed my wrist. I looked down at my grandfather, who now fully stood beside me. Mia, please, I'm sorry. I said nothing while he continued. Mia, I didn't mean to be like that. I know your mother, and you went through a lot due to him. I hate that a man who is supposed to love a child and his mate would do such a thing. No one should go through that. My grandfather lets go of my wrist. I want to make him pay for what he did to you both, but I also want you to feel like you can open up about it to anyone, including us. He let out a sigh. I forget that we only just met, and we don't know each other well enough to be like that. But since you walked in here, it feels like we have known you all our life. His words meant more, but how I felt was getting to me. I needed to get out of here and fast. Without thinking, I move away from him and closer to the door. I don't look back until I step closer to the door. I look back and all four of them are looking at me. This is all too much. I sighed and looked through the glass door towards the forest. I never had anyone to talk about what happened to me. All my friends abandoned me for their stupid alpha friend. I had no one. A tear escaped while I tried to hold it together. Not once did someone make sure I was okay. I knew if I died, no one would ever miss me. I was alone and learned over the last 7 years I was on my own, and whatever happened, I had to protect my wolf. My eyes darted to the reflection of the people behind me. They were all looking on concerned, but I wouldn't let them see me cry for people who didn't deserve my tears. I heard all the stories that came to light about white wolves, I said, which made the whole room tense at the mere words of white wolves. I wondered if they knew more about what I was, but I continued my rant, not wanting to pry about it. Not one person knew what it was like for me at Shadow Creek. I had to protect my wolf and myself to ensure no one knew. I would have told a few people about it, but when everyone started to believe what my father and Chloe were saying, I soon realized I had no one to trust. I turned to look at them. My words all saddened them, but something else was written on their face, and I ignored it. I had no one to talk to, and even if I did talk, I was beaten by whoever was dishing it all out, whether it was my father or even the bullies at school. So it wasn't just my father who tormented me, grandfather. It was everyone else. Turning back to the door, I pushed it open and ran off. Lila was close by, wanting to take over, so I let her in. As soon as we got to the forest edge, she shifted. She shook out her fur and took off running. No words were said between us since she knew I needed time to think. I went back further into her head, not wanting to talk about how I felt. It must have been a first for me. Talking again about what I had endured was one thing, but no one should ask those questions or even want to know what happened unless the person was ready to talk. I had my fair share of talking today, and I was done. Between Alpha Robert and now my grandfather, I was at a loss. I knew I needed answers to everything, and everyone had a plan to take down the Beta family, but at what cost? They took so much from many. Now they took away from the pack I once called home. But the word home for that place felt foreign to me. It hasn't been my home since my mum left. My mind was racing with every scenario, now giving me a headache. Me too, Lila mumbled and let out a sigh. Rest and stop overthinking. She never had to say that to me, but she was right. I needed a clear head, and thinking about what was or should be wasn't helping me. Taking some time, I soon rested as Lila picked up more speed and ran as far as she could until she stopped. Panting hard, I moved closer to see where she had ended up, which was by an opening in the middle of nowhere. Only grass and trees surrounded us. "Why did you stop?" I murmured, which only caused her to push me back until her eyes were on me. "I have been running for a while and tired. I need to rest." I smiled at her. "Sorry, I didn't realize." Lila said nothing, saking, only moved toward a small opening where two trees looked like they were leaning on one another. She lay down and breathed while looking around and taking in the surroundings. "This is more like it," she whispered after a while. Peace. I couldn't agree more. There was nothing to disturb us, not even my racing mind. I knew the only true thing. Lila was the only person I ever had behind me. She was the one who stood by me when I felt alone. "And I will do it 10s over," she murmured with a yawn. "Now please, let me sleep for a little." I said nothing while Lila fell asleep, and I could feel my eyes drift off too. Josephine. Having my daughter's mind link me to tell me Alpha Robert had been asking about me only made me smile. I had been working on that man for years, trying to get him to open up or date me. I tried every trick in the book, even slipping something into his tea, but that never seemed to work. The man was a walking I have never had to work so hard to win a man. He lost his mate. So what? He had delayed our plans to take over the pack, and now we were scrambling to get everything ready. This pack was to be taken over months ago, but everyone got greedy along the way, and now it was my turn to get everyone back on track. I needed to forget about Alpha Robert and focus on what was next. Leaving the pack was part of the plan. I needed to be elsewhere for a while Chloe worked her magic on Aiden. We need her as the Luna, and soon, which should all be on the up since that pathetic little beta brat is now gone. Who would have thought an Alpha's son would be so obsessed with a little runt like her? The bustling of conversation hovered over me while I looked around and shook away thoughts that had surfaced. I was waiting to meet my friend, Morgan, a witch. She has been helping us since we got to the pack with spells and even potions. Where the hell is that girl? Heaving a sigh, I pushed through the crowds of humans. Meeting her in a few towns over from the pack was her idea. She didn't want any wolves following me. We still needed to keep her under wraps until we were ready to fight. Oh, how would my mate have loved seeing all this? The man was a dreamer, but also a fool. He never saw the bigger picture, and because of that, he got himself killed. I was sad about his loss, but I never went off the tracks and made sure my children knew what was next. Someone had to take over. My sons are known for being relentless, just like their father, but they prefer to engage actively, while Chloe focuses solely on herself. Stepping up as a mother and mate was at least I could do. Being in charge of a pack was always the dream goal for our family. Killing our alpha was one step, but we had to overcome other hurdles to get to this point. And working alongside rogues was one thing no one would see coming. Rogues hate working together. When we found some, we mentioned we would take them all on as pack members for whatever their crimes for help. When I mentioned what pack we were willing to take down, they were all for it. The pack we are at now is only a stepping stone to the largest one. No one will see it coming, but if everything has worked out right, it will all happen soon. Alpha Robert slipped out of the alpha role, kept himself closed inside his damn room, and wouldn't let anyone in, not even his pathetic friend and beta, David. The beta was a broken man, riddled with guilt. He never told me why or what he did. the man was a walking disaster. He loved his booze like a sailor, but getting him on some hard stuff was easy. The man had a violent temper, but who would have thought he would take it out on that brat so violently, too? Looking around, I spotted the store Morgan wanted to meet at and headed toward it. I walked inside and spotted her straight away, and she wasn't alone. Charlie, my eldest son, was with her. A smile pulled the corners of my lips up as I stepped toward them. "There you are," Charlie muttered, leaning back in his chair. His eyes searched mine and then went to Morgan. "You're late." I rolled my eyes, knowing he was in a mood about something, but it didn't bother me. He was a grump at the best of times, but being here with his mother and unable to do what he wanted made him act like a child. Pulling out a chair, I sat down and looked at Morgan, who seemed irritated. "What's got your panties in a bunch?" I asked while she let out a sigh. If you must know, everything is not in place. Knowing she was right was one thing, but admitting it was not what I would do. "We need more rogues to be around," she said, glancing between Charlie and me. "We need more than what we got if the news I heard is right." "What news was that?" Charlie heaved, not interested. "Well, word got out that Alpha Robert had a meeting with—" "Alphas," I exclaimed, cutting her off. "Chloe told me earlier. He also mentioned about me." "Not what I meant," she gritted. "Even if it was an alpha meeting," she said, glancing up and around before she got back to me. She seemed on edge. "If the alphas are meeting, it is to something big." I knew she was right about what she was saying, but it was something we would deal with when it came. My wolf yawned and said, "She is worried that someone followed us. Stupid witch think we don't know how to get rid of people who follow us." My eyes stayed on Morgan momentarily, and I moved closer to her, gripping her hand hard. "You think I don't know that?" I said, making her tense. My wolf moved closer to the surface to show how pissed she was at her. Morgan said nothing, but stilled while I continued. "But the alphas are not a bother to us. We stay on course with what we have planned for the pack. No one will stop us. And what about—" A low growl escaped my lips just as my claws came out and dug into the flesh of her wrist, which made her grit her teeth in pain. "No need to think like that. You keep making your potions and creating those spells, and leave all the other work to the wolves." "Don't think so lowly of me," I said, letting go of her wrist. I leaned back with a smile while she placed a napkin on her wrist to soak up the blood. "The other pack won't be an issue. There hasn't been any word from them in years." Morgan stared at me with a glare. "Don't look like that, or Charlie can do what he did to your family." Morgan said nothing, but I knew what I was doing. Charlie killed her family and is now stuck babysitting her until she has done what we need her to do. "Once we are done here, I will hunt for more rogues to join our cause," I said with conviction. "I won't return to the pack until we have the needed numbers for what we will do. What we planned will be epic, since everyone will look at what we have done." Both kept their eyes on me while I continued. "Chloe will stay in the pack to get Aiden on board. Charlie and you will keep in contact with her on time to make sure she has everything she needs. I will contact her when I can." They both nodded. "Now, before I leave," I said with a grin, "tell me what Brandon is up to. Is it messy?" Charlie chuckled while Morgan went a few shades paler than usual. "Brandon and Charlie have their father's taste in conflicting pain. Brandon has been in another pack and has done a better job since he took his friend Easton with him. They both have a fondness for blood." "Well," Charlie began. Only listening to the words he tells me has shivers running up my spine. "All three know we can't stay here long, but spending some time with my son is good. Maybe next time it will be with my other one, MIA. I didn't know how long I was in the forest." Lila had laid down and had fallen asleep. I stared ahead, letting my thoughts cloud my every being. Everything that happened when meeting my grandparents came flooding back. I know I didn't need to run from them, but it was all too much. The feeling of feeling weak hounded me. No wonder no one wanted anything to do with me. "They do," Lila said, which was followed by a yawn. Her eyes flickered open, which let in some sunlight. I moved slightly closer till she let me have full control. I shifted back. Looking around, I realized we were close by the lake. Not caring to be naked, I stood up and walked over to the water's edge, just when Lila spoke. "There is no need for a pity party," she murmured. which made me stop and look back at her with a confused look. Her eyes met mine, and her face softened. "You are good enough. You are my human, and I am honored to have you as my one." Warmth spread through me, which meant she was sending her love through our bond. "You shouldn't care what anyone thinks. Yeah, you went through torture at the hands of your father and some friends, but you will come out fighting the other side." Her words sent a shiver through me, making me know she had my back. "I always have your back, Mia," she murmured, moving back slightly till she was laying down in my head. "All we need to do is train. You are not doing this alone, not ever again. And I believe I won't be the only one who will defend you till your dying breath." Not liking what she said, I looked back and decided to go for a little swim in the lake. It was cold, but it was refreshing. I swam a little into the middle and looked around. Silence was all I could hear. There was not one bird in the sky or deer running. Nothing. Just peace and quiet. Something I took for granted when I was back home. But with everything that I went through, I welcomed the silence with open arms. My mind raced over the words Lila had said. "I wouldn't let anyone die for me." Lila said nothing. "Lila, I want to be stronger," I said, like it was some sort of decoration of what I wanted and taking a stand on my feelings. "I don't want to be the girl who everyone can torture." Keeping my head above water, I looked back at Lila, who gave me a nod, but before I could say anything, there was a of branch, which made me look back out to see who was there. Lila moved forward to look. I scanned around until I saw my grandfather and mother standing there, staring back at me. Moving forward and out of the water, my grandfather turned around when I got out of the water. "I brought you clothes," Mum said with a smile. Her eyes on me, I looked at her and then to my grandfather's head. A mind link came through from Mum. "He wanted to give you privacy when you change." I said nothing, but quickly grabbed the clothes from my mother and put them on. There was no towel to dry with, but no one thought I would go in the water. Once dressed, I stepped back. "You can turn around now." My grandfather turned around and gave me a smile. "Mia, I wanted to apologize for what happened back at the cafe. I didn't mean to come across." I shook my head. "You don't need to apologize. I overreacted to what was being said. I didn't mean to come across like..." "You had a perfect reason to," he murmured with a small smile. "You are also right. We don't know what it was like in that pack for you." My grandfather looked at me and then to my mum. "As your mother and grandmother mentioned to me," he said, turning to face me, "you had no one to look after you, no one to defend you from what you went through." I said nothing, knowing he wasn't finished. "You are not alone now, Mia," he said. "You have a family who are willing to fight alongside you. We are here. We are here to protect, keep you safe and your wolf." My grandfather takes a breath and takes a step toward me while he places his hands on my arms. He looks at me full of love. "You have a beautiful wolf, and her power is precious." I could feel Lila's warmth spread through me again, but it was aimed at my grandfather. "I think we should show Shadow Creek what they are missing, and also Lila is not to be messed with," he said. My grandfather comes closer to me. Both Lila and I look at him, just when he pulls us into a hug. His scent wraps around us like a soft blanket. I moved my arms around him and held him in place. This was what it was like to be loved by a family member. Mum always showed me that side of it, but my father wasn't like that. He was the one who used his fist instead of being the role model a child needed. Pulling back, I looked at him with a smile while he continued. His eyes glistened as he spoke. "You don't have to show Lila to me. Not until you are ready." I said nothing. My eyes went to my mother, who seemed to be wiping her tears. "You don't know how long I have waited to see this." Stepping away from my grandfather, I moved toward her and pulled her toward me. I hugged her like my life depended on it, which it did at that moment. Both were what I needed. I knew I had to be braver with them, and why not start now? Stepping out of my mother's arms, I looked between them both. "Shall we head back home?" My grandfather let out a laugh. "Whatever you want, Mia." I smiled and turned around, walking in step with my mother and grandfather, MIA. Walking back to the cafe, I felt slightly better. The conversation flowed freely between the three of us. Mainly my grandfather, telling me all about when he was alpha of the pack and what he would have done differently. There are not many things I would change, he murmured, looking ahead with a smile. Your uncle has taken this pack somewhere better than I ever could. More like followed the century, Mum blurted, which was quite quick for her to come back with. I let out a laugh while my grandfather pulled a face. You may be older, but you still have a smack behind the head, he grumbled, which made me look at Mum, who smirked. I loved watching the way they were together. It brought me closer to remembering what it was to have a family. They were waiting for us. They looked at us and smiled. We continued our way until the cafe came to the place where Ryland and my grandmother were. Ryland ran towards us but wrapped his arms around me. Lila was close and even purred by the contact from my little brother. He looked at me and grinned. You came back, he said happily. Those 3 words ached my heart. Did he really think I wouldn't have come back? The corners of my lips curled up into a smile. I would always come back. I just needed some time to collect my thoughts. That's what some people need to do, Rai, my grandmother said, coming closer to us. She looked at me and smiled. I'm sorry for the line of questioning. Sometimes your grandfather forgets he's not an alpha anymore. Her eyes darted at my grandfather, and he gave him a stern look. Looking between them and the rest of my family, I felt at peace. Mia, I want to show myself, Lila said, pulling me back from my thoughts and back at her. Her eyes were full of something which was hard to figure out. Are you sure? I asked. We can do it when we are. Lila shook her head, which cut me off. I want to. Our family needs to see us. We shouldn't be afraid to show who we are with them. They will love us as we are. There was so much certainty in her voice, which put me at ease. I looked back and soon realized everyone was looking at me. Everything all right? Mum asked, which made me look at her. I gave her a nod and a smile, but looked between them all before I spoke. Lila wants to show herself, I said. Mia, Lila, you don't have to show her. Not because I asked, my grandfather said, making me wonder why he was acting this way. He thinks we are doing this because he asked. Reaching my hand to his, I grabbed it. I shook my head. Lila wants to, and so do I. He gave me a smile. Looking at everyone, I let out a breath. I don't want to be afraid anymore. Lila and I want to become stronger and learn to fight. Everyone grinned. I let go of my grandfather's hand and stepped back slightly to give myself more room. Closing my eyes, I looked back at Lila, who gave me a nod. I let her take over and shift. Once we were in her form, Lila shook out her fur and looked toward everyone. Everyone stood in awe. Mia, Lila, Ryland said, stepping closer with his hand reached to touch her. Let him touch you, I whispered to her, and she moved closer and nudged his hand with her snout. Ryland giggled, which made Lila move closer and lick his cheek. The warmth and love that came from Ryland made Lila act like a puppy, which was nice to see. Mia, Lila and you are special, I can sense it. You are more powerful than your mother and your grandmother was. I can sense it with your aura, my grandfather said, stepping into view of Lila, who decided to move toward him and nudge his hand with her snout too. My grandfather smiled and rubbed her head, which Lila loved while he continued. Both are amazing, and no one will ever change that, but my dear, what we all want is for you to be open with us. We are here for you, and don't forget that. You are not on your own anymore, Mia. I let his words sink in while tears came. I have never felt like this in a long time, not since I came here. No one has ever told me they were there for me. I knew after meeting my mother, brother, and everyone here, I knew I wasn't on my own anymore. There would be someone to have back, not like back in my pack. I had no one to have my back there, and no protection from all the horrors that I faced. The words that my grandfather had said, and even Lila's words, were now sinking. I can see it now. Everyone hasn't made me feel any less since I got here, since I came here. They were here to save me from what I had been through. I knew there was something that needed to be done, and I knew it would take time for me to take on my fears, which would be facing everyone back home, Aiden, Chloe, or even my father. All I knew was I needed to get stronger and be able to be strong to do all that. Lila could sense I needed to come forward and pulled back from my grandfather. She pushed me forward, letting me shift back. I stood rooted to the spot, looking at them. My grandparents' eyes scanned over my naked flesh, which revealed everything of my torment, but neither of them showed me pity, which was a first. Mia, my grandmother said, but my mum stepped closer with a smile. Scars of the past can be healed, but the ones shown are the battles that make you stronger. That saying alone was something to live by, which made me smile at her. Thank you. You don't know how much all of your words are to me, I said, which made everyone smile. My mother looked at me and smiled. I'm glad to hear that, sweetheart. She moved toward me and gave me a side hug. I love you. I love you, I said, leaning my head on her shoulder. Ryland came up to me and handed me a t-shirt. Then he looked back at our grandmother and smiled. Can we have some more food? Everyone laughed while I placed the t-shirt on and looked at everyone. Come on, my grandmother said, turning around. I can whip up something for us all. Without saying anything, we all followed her back into the cafe since I was hungry. MIA. After a few hours of having good food, the conversation flowed like I had been at the pack for years. Lila was content, even coming closer to listen to all the stories that were mentioned. Hearing them made us feel somewhat connected to the pack and even to the family I had never thought I had. The rest of the evening was perfect, laughing at jokes and learning more about each of my family members. My grandmother loved cooking, walking, and knitting. She even often makes me some things, such as scarves and gloves for when the winter weather comes in. Ever since my grandfather retired from being the alpha of the pack, he knew he would need a hobby and took up carpentry. He mentioned he used to be good at it back in the day, and it felt like he had never been apart from it when he started back up. He has already made a few items, which he wanted to show me another time. Even though they seemed to know what went on with my old pack, I gave them a summary of what had happened to me over those years when my mother left. Speaking to them all about everything, even though they didn't know the extent of it, I could tell from the way they were looking at me. Tears flowed freely as I let the words out. But it wasn't about what I was telling them that was getting me upset. It was they told me after everything. No one was there for me when I needed them, I murmured, letting another tear fall as I glanced down at the plate. I was alone. A chair scraped the floor and someone walked over to me till I felt hands go to my shoulder. I looked up to see my grandmother with tears in her eyes. I watched her move slowly till she was sitting next to me and gave me a gentle squeeze on my shoulder. That's not ever happening again, Mia, she said with a small smile. You are loved here and will never be alone. That part I can guarantee since I won't let it happen. Her words meant more to me at that moment, but I was too stunned to say anything. I know you don't believe what I am saying, and all I suggest is don't give up on us, she said, looking away. Her eyes darted around the room, which made me do the same. I met my grandfather and mother's eyes, both filled with tears but understanding. You are loved here, my grandmother said, making me look back at her. You and your wolf are. Knowing what she was saying made me know they were all behind me. I somehow knew after meeting my mother, brother, and everyone that I wasn't on my own. Not like I was back at my old pack. No one had my back. No one protected me from all the horrors of everything I had endured there. But since being here, I see it now. Everyone has been amazing since I came here. They have helped me come to terms with everything, letting me act out when I feel overwhelmed. I know I have a long way to go, but I know now I have more people helping me. Lila purred, actually purred in my head. I felt her warmth wrap around me. She has always had my back, even in those dark times. I always will, she whispered softly, which only made me close my eyes at her words. This was a new sense of peace for me. Opening my eyes, I looked back at my family and smiled, but looked toward my grandmother. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Those words made her smile. She knew she had gotten through to me somehow, but she could see the impact of what she said. Help me. I needed to keep her words in my thoughts. I need to make sure I remember them when I start to doubt everything, even myself. The entire conversation left me feeling drained, but I would never think that cake would make it all better. My grandmother made the best apple pie I have ever tasted. She even offered to make more when I came to see them again. Mum mentioned we had to leave, which was unfortunate since I wanted to spend more time with them. But Mum promised we would be seeing more of our grandparents now that I have met them. You can't get rid of us that easily, my grandfather said with a smile. Grinning, I walked over to him just when he pulled me into a hug and whispered, "Before you leave for that pack, you and I will have a chat about your wolf before you leave. Nothing wrong, but I have something to tell you and even give you." Lila said nothing, and confusion hit us. What the hell did that mean? My grandfather pulled back and smiled. After a few moments, he looked up toward my mother. "Now both of you need to train hard," he said, looking between myself and my mother, but he turned his attention to Ryland. "And you, young man, you will love Spain," he said, which made my heart ache slightly. I had never been abroad before, but maybe once all this is done, I could do some traveling. There was an awkward silence between us till my grandmother spoke. "Tomorrow, training, the rest of the day, family. Alpha Sam and Luna Sadie would like to see you all now." She smiled before she continued. "We can all have a family meal tomorrow or the day after. I'll bring more apple pie." I smiled but said nothing. After we all said our goodbyes, we all got into the SUV and headed back to the pack house. My mind raced over everything that was said, but this time there was a part of me that wanted to be stronger and prove to myself I could do more than anyone else thinks. We don't know when the time will come when we have to go to Shadow Creek, but we must be ready. Both Lila and I need to be ready, both mentally and physically. I want to prove that I am not weak, and I know I don't have a lot of time to get myself together. "We will be ready, Mia," Lila said. "We got each other, and we can do this. Together." I smile knowing my wolf was right. I know this is going to be the new me, the new Lila. We are not the same wolves they remember, and we will show them. This was me facing my fears and my past, whether it will be sooner or later, whether it is Aiden and Chloe, or even my father. I needed to be able to be strong to do all that, and I was now more focused. Aiden. Meeting Darren and Lee in my room, I told them everything that had happened with my father in his office. Both looked on stunned, letting my words sink it. All of what my father told me about what he knew about Mia's abuse and what he thought. I told them everything. Leaving out what I wanted to plan, I needed them to be on board with everything first. "He knows what we did to Mia," Lee murmured, looking guilty. "It wasn't just us. Chloe had a hand in all this. We did what she—" "I never told him it was Chloe," I said, cutting him off, which only him opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He closed it and his face hardened. "Why would you do that?" he growled. Looking at him, my eyes drifted to Darren, who seemed to be far away from what we were discussing, and then went back to Lee. "That is the other issue my father has. It seems Chloe and her mum are up to something." Keeping my eyes on Lee, I explained about what my father said and what he knew. When the rogues were mentioned, Darren's head turned back to face me. "So, what do you want to do? There is clearly a plan you have to say, so say it." His words were harsh. I don't know whether it was aimed at everything I had said, or that fact it may have something to do with Mia. The movement came into my head, letting me know Jake was close by. I knew he had been listening to what I was telling them. His anger magnified through me, not liking my words. He never wanted to do anything to Mia, neither did I. But whenever Chloe spoke, it was weird. It felt like her word was law, which was not right since she wasn't an alpha. She was a nobody. Not even going into details, I let go of what was bugging me and let out a sigh. "I have a plan," I said, "and I know everyone will not like what I am about to say, but it has to be done." Darren and Lee exchanged looks between each other and then looked back at me. "I am going to make an announcement that Chloe is my mate," I murmured. Those 4 words were met with loud growls from both my friends and my wolf. "You can't do that," Darren said, standing up from his chair. "Why would you? This is insane," Lee said, glaring at me. "After everything you have told us about her and her mum, does your father know?" I shook my head, which only made them both start to shout more at me. "What?" they both yelled. "If this is some sick, twisted game you are playing, Aid, your father isn't going to like this." I let them speak their mind, but anger filled my veins. "What about what she did to Mia? What about the rogues she met?" "Enough!" I shouted, making them both stand and glare at me. "This is not up for a debate," I stated, and let out a frustrated sigh. "My plan is not what you think. I am only giving her what she wants." "Me," I said, staring back at them. Neither one of them spoke, so I continued. Jake was still quiet in my head. He should know my plan since he knows how I feel. I want to make Chloe my mate for her to think she has control. Once she knows she has me, then we can watch what she does. Moving from where I was, I stood before them. We can follow her, see where she goes, and see who she meets. Her mother is nowhere on the territory, so my father will probably focus on her and finding her. We can deal with Chloe ourselves. Follow her, you say. How does that work? There is only the three of us? Darren asked, looking not so angry with me. I shook my head. Before I make her my mate, we can investigate who we can trust. Bring more people in on this, they can help us with what we are doing, I said, staring at him. Your mate for one, maybe some of her friends. We need to find some people who have it in for Chloe too. There was some silence until Lee broke it. What about your dad? He will need to know. I sighed, keeping my eyes on him. My father isn't exactly in my corner at the moment, I said, leaning back on the desk. Pressing my butt to it, I looked at him. Whoever told him what had happened to Mia made it to the point that I am number suspect, even you two. Neither of them spoke. We keep this between us, I said, moving my head side to side till a click came. We can add more people to this when we need to. What about Sarah? She can... Not Sarah, I said, knowing exactly that she was on Chloe's side. I needed to find out if she was a follower or someone who we could trust. Lee frowned. We all have been friends for years. She would believe us and even help, surely? I go to open my mouth, but Darren beats me to it. I'm with Aiden on Sarah, he said, looking slightly off. Sarah and Chloe have been besties ever since she came. Sarah has even done more harm to Mia than what you and I did. Shuddering at his words, even I knew that was true. Mia may have been gone from us now, but it still haunts us. Maybe what happened to her was our fault. When will all this start? Lee asked, making me look at him. In a few days, I said, moving my ass from the table. We will monitor what is going on and even think about who should join us on this. Once we figure out what we need, I will announce it. The only thing is, Lee, I will need you to help me with her. Lee pulled a face. As in? Like before? I murmured, which made my friend look down. We both had her, never shared, but have had her in ways no man should. Not all the time, he muttered. After everything you have told us, I would rather be celibate and chop off my to feed it to wild horses. Darren and I smirked, but even I had to agree with him on that one. There was no way I was touching her again. She wasn't even my mate, only a means to a must. Both of my friends left shortly after, leaving me to my thoughts. Jake had been quiet throughout it, till we were alone. This may not work, he muttered as I stared out the window. She may not even agree. Somehow part of me doesn't think so, I said, looking back at him. She made it her mission to get with me. Let's give her what she wants and then we can figure out what the hell is going on. Jake stared at me, but said nothing. This may be the only way we can find out the truth about what is going on. 2 weeks later. 2 weeks have flown by so quickly. Everything here at Dark Forest Pack has been a whirlwind experience after another. The first couple of days were weird, as I had to stay off my leg due to catching a new infection in the cut my father gave me before I came here. I had to have it reopened and stitched again. I was on antibiotics for a week. But that never changed anything. Lila has been healing me, but the infection in my leg was too far gone for her to heal. It needed proper medicine. Once my leg was bandaged up, I would spend most of the time getting to know my mother again and my little brother. We learned a lot about each other. It was nice to have that connection again with my mother. It felt like we had never left each other. Even though my leg was still not 100%, my mum and I started our training with my uncle. My grandfather and brother would stand on the sidelines, both egging us on. I have to admit it has been tough, but I feel great about it. A few days ago, Lila started some training too. She has been present at my training sessions, learning what to do, which has helped, and we also trained together in human form, which resulted in my uncle being flown across the training field. It was quite amusing to see an alpha land on his ass. Hard. My mother and I tried to control our laughter, which was probably the hardest thing we ever had to do. During the last 2 weeks, other things happened. Besides spending more time with my mum and Ryland, I also got to spend more time with my grandparents. We often would go to their cafe and have food. Going through either what we went through on that day or hearing stories of what it was like when they were Alpha and Luna. Each story was everything I wanted to hear. But when it came to hearing stories regarding Mum and Ryland from their times here, I would start to feel left out. Hearing them was one thing, but knowing I missed some special and laughable moments took a toll on me. I never spoke about how it all made me feel, only to Lila. Lila has been the one source of comfort to me, like when we were back in our old pack. With her kind words and love, I mustered through it all. "I'm here with you," she said, pulling me out of my memories. My eyes went back to her, while she cocked her head to the side but said nothing. Shaking my head, I looked back and smiled. Today, Sasha and I have spent the entire morning together. She came to training with my mother and me and even got a kick out of some of the moves Lila and I did together. After that, we went for a walk and even stopped by my grandparents for some food, sweet cherry pie. After the delicious treat, we walked back to the pack house and decided to head to the library. After everything that has been happening with training and getting to spend more time with my family, ever since my grandfather mentioned telling me more about the white wolf, I am still waiting to hear more about it. After the first time of meeting with my grandparents and with what happened, I told Sasha everything. She was supportive, but when I told her what my grandfather had said, she was intrigued too. We planned on waiting to hear what he had to say, but nothing came from it. Last night, Sasha and I decided to go to the library to see if we could find anything about the white wolf in there. She mentioned the library had information about everything from other shifters to legacies, and Sasha thought there might be something about my wolf in there. Letting out a sigh, I looked at my friend who was flipping through another book that probably went on the same pile, but there was nothing. Sasha threw the book down and sighed loudly. Nothing. Where the hell would the information be? She moved from the chair and went over to the bookshelf on the farthest side and started to look through some of the titles. I said nothing, watching her. Maybe I should see my grandfather about it. It may be the only way to find out more about what he was getting at. We can ask him later, Lila said with a sigh. Mum wants us to pick up Ryland later from them. That was true. Mum and Alpha Sam have been locked in his office for the last few days. They have been in constant contact with Alpha Robert and have been doing some secret stuff too, which has had Gwen back out of the pack for the last 2 weeks. Gwen left the pack not long after the talks and has only been in contact with my uncle and mother. It has been all hush, hush. There is nothing in any of these books, Sasha said, sounding frustrated. I rolled my eyes and gave her a small smile. It's okay. Maybe I can ask my grandfather later when I pick up Ryland from them, I said and looked at her. Lately, Sasha has been distracted. Are you okay? Sasha stared at me and sighed. I'm okay. I'm just really missing my aunt and can't wait to see her. It is lonely when she is not around. My brother gets so annoying too. I smiled. Sasha had spent more time with me and my family over the last few days. She and her brother had been arguing a lot, and in her words, I need some girl time, which made me laugh. When is she back? I asked. Sasha opened her mouth but closed it while she went blank for a moment. Someone was mind-linking her. A few seconds later, she comes back with a beaming smile plastered on her face. Now, she just pulled up in the drive to the pack house. Alpha Sam said we can head to the office to see her. Smiling, I nodded and moved away from where I was sitting. My mind raced over to what Gwen would have to say about my old pack. But we all know nothing about my old pack was good. But we can only just hope. MIA. We walked out of the library and headed straight to my uncle's office. I could feel Lila settling in my head, but was close to hearing what was going to be said. On our way there, Sasha's mind linked to her brother about Gwen being back. He mentioned he would see her later, since she had to tell Alpha Sam about what she had found. After that, Sasha mentioned how better it would be to have Gwen back. Even though it may have only been for over a week, but Gwen was part of our family, and her being in my old pack brought up loads of uneasy feelings. Stepping inside the office, we were met with a few people. My uncle and mother were facing us, but Gwen had her back to us. Auntie, Sasha said excitedly, walking over to Gwen in a few strides. Gwen spun around and pulled Sasha into a hug. A small smile played on my lips watching the scene. My eyes met my mum's, who seemed to be getting teary-eyed suddenly. After a few seconds, Gwen and Sasha pulled apart and looked toward me just when I looked away from my mother. "Mia, I am so happy to see you looking so well." "Thanks, you were missed." Gwen let out a slight laugh and motioned for all to sit. Sasha and I grabbed the seats, not too far from her and my mum. "How was your trip to Alpha Robert's pack?" my uncle asked, getting straight to the point. "I know he organized this whole thing. What did he want you to do?" Gwen looked at him, then looked around as she started to tell us what she learned. "Well, after the meeting with us," she said, getting more comfortable, "he made some huge decisions regarding everything. He has been working behind the closed doors, setting everything up in play." "What had he been doing?" my mum asked. Gwen went into details that Alpha Robert had told her. It sounded like he wanted to change his pack for the better. Some of the changes he made were set in place before Gwen had left. There would be a curfew for most of the pack. He stated that there had been a few sightings of rogues, and it was for their safety. Everything he was doing was aimed toward what he learned. He never wanted anyone to go through what I did when I was there. That last part shocked me since it was all too late to do something for me. Why would he act like that? "Mia, no one should have gone through what you did. You stayed in silence and alone. Alpha Robert may have been the worst Alpha back then, but at least he is trying. He wants to make sure no one else suffers alone like you did," Lila murmured, not moving from where she was resting. I knew she was right, but I said nothing. "Any news on Josephine and Chloe?" my uncle said, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at Gwen to see her tense at the question. "What happened now?" Gwen looked at my uncle for a moment, but then turned to face me. "Josephine was there, but before I left, she disappeared. It happened before the curfew went into place." I gave her a nod, but there seemed to be more. Gwen stopped, her eyes on me, and then continued. "Mia, an announcement went out over the pack link that Aiden and Chloe are mates." There was an awkward silence left in the air after her words. Those words shouldn't affect me, but they somehow do. I don't know if it was because of the friendship we had before all this mess started. Realizing everyone was staring at me, I looked between each one till I got back to Gwen. "That's nice. Why would it bother me?" "Well, after what Chloe did to you and Aiden being the way he was," my mum started to say, but I shook my head and looked at her. "There is nothing to say," I stated. "There is nothing between Aiden and me. It hasn't been in a long time, and Chloe made sure of that. If you all are asking what I think about it, there is nothing to discuss. Since being here and learning to train, I have become more stronger than I was back then. They are my past. I need to look more forward to the future, even if it means helping the pack that destroyed me to begin with." There was a sense of relief to finally admit I wasn't going to let myself fall victim to them ever again. My mind changed when I started to take my own advice. I was going to conquer my fears, and will have to soon enough, but it was all on when my uncle and Alpha Robert will get everything into place for us to take down what is happening for good. But both Alphas have been secretly discussing plans, making sure there is something in place for when the shit hits the fan. "That is good to hear," Mum said, making me come back to the present. "You took your grandfather's and uncle's advice about conquering your fears." I gave her a smile, but said nothing. "Well, there is one topic we need to discuss, and that's your father," Gwen said, making me freeze at word father. I hadn't even thought about him. "What about?" I asked. My eyes went to my mum, who seemed to be more tense but looked back at Gwen. Gwen looked between the both of us and then landed on me. "When I got to the pack, there was no sign of your father. And as bold as I am, I asked Alpha Robert where or what happened to him." She stopped for a moment and then continued. It looked like she was trying to compose herself. "It seems David had taken your death hard," she said, using air quotes around my death, and continued. "He was totally drunk and rambling about it was his fault. The fire started." My stomach twisted into knots as she spoke more. Alpha Robert admitted that he had some sort of idea something was wrong, an inkling that his friend was up to no good. He never thought his friend would hurt his only daughter, He mentioned he was in his own little world, but there were times he should have known, as the time your father came into the office one day and had blood on his hands. He told the Alpha that he was dealing with a prisoner. He didn't think anything about it. Gwen gave me a sad look. It was when they held the ceremony at the pack. Apparently, he made a command that everyone should show up, and you never came. Lila let out a growl, not liking what she heard, but all I could do was listen. I was starting to feel the numbness setting in, and it was the only way I could cope with what she was saying. My uncle stated to find an emotion that I could use when I am training. Hearing all this, it would be anger. A mind link opened, my uncle. Training with me after this. Sasha and you. You need to let out all the anger you are holding on to. We can use it in your training. I can't go, I said, looking at him. I need to pick up Ryland from the cafe. Your mum can do it, he said with a sigh. You can meet them there after training. You need to let it all out and not hold on to it. I said nothing and closed the link. Looking at Gwen, I sighed. What happened to my father? Even though I shouldn't care about him anymore. Gwen stared at me and sighed. It seems David went into the office and blurted out a few home truths about what he did to you. Drink was the cause, and he even commented on wanting to end it all. Alpha Robert heard enough and took him to a rehab clinic. My mind raced over her words. He wanted to end it all. My father admitting failure to what he was like. Clearing my throat, I looked around. Is it okay if I go for a run? All this information was taking its toll on me. Hearing about my father and his actions, to everything, Chloe and Aiden were not even part of my mind. Mia. Shaking my head, I stood up and sighed. I don't want to know anything more about the man who abused and tortured me most of my life. I don't want anything to do with him. Taking a breath, I continued. He can get the help he needs, but that is not on me. Looking toward Sasha, who stared at me with sad eyes. Run with me. It wasn't a question. It was pleading with her not to let me be alone. Lila was moving into position to get ready to take over to shift. Sasha didn't need to be told. She gave me a nod and stood up. Run with you. Yes! Turning to look at my uncle, who gave me a nod and knew I would see him later. I will be back in an hour. I need to clear my head before we train. I didn't even let him talk. Moving away from my chair, I walked out with Sasha following me. We took off out of the pack house and let our wolves take over. Once they were shaking their fur out, they both took off running. Being pushed back and sitting in Lila's head, anger was surfacing, but I was going to use it for the training with my uncle later. I need to have peace, and letting Lila do the running was all I could. Being in the darkness was for me to reflect on what I needed, and at that moment, I needed to remember I was improving as a person, getting stronger. I still have scars from the attacks I had over the years, but they are my battle wounds that tell a story. That's what they are, battle scars of my past, and I wasn't letting that define who I am trying to become. Emma. My eyes stayed on the door, where my daughter had gone through. There was no way all that information would not take a toll on her. Her need not to look back made me proud of how far she had come in the last 2 weeks. She has been taking everything in her stride and has improved. Our training has caught most of the pack members' attention since there are now 2 white wolves in the pack. We had gathered a crowd when we do, and many times it has been something to see when my daughter even takes down her uncle with force. Part of me wonders if she has someone in mind when she is attacking. My poor brother has been on his ass more times than I can count. It was funny to watch, though, Lynx murmured, which only made me smile. Looking toward my brother, his eyes were on me for a moment while giving me a knowing look. Mia will be fine, he stated. Not to me, but to Gwen more. She may have overcome loads in the last 2 weeks, but there are clearly some topics that are not worth mentioning to her about, especially when it comes to her father. The mere mention of my mate had my stomach churning. Hearing what Gwen had said about him being in rehab for his drinking made me question why now. Looking toward my friend, I knew I had to ask her, even if it was for me, more than Mia. I can understand Mia's reaction to David being in rehab, especially after what he put her through. Why the hell now? Gwen looked at me, her eyes softening. There were many nights my friend was in my room when I was crippled in pain because of his infidelity. He was with another woman. I could feel everything. It did become a thing when I needed to be sedated at one point, especially in the beginning. Like I said, he brought some home truths about what he did to Mia to Alpha Robert, Gwen said, leaning back in her chair. Alpha Robert's face said it all. He must have mentioned about the kinds of torture he did to her. He nearly was sick telling me. He told you what he did, my brother said. Anger laced the air. Knowing him, it was more aimed at David than at Alpha Robert. He mentioned about using the new weapons that were in the cells, that he would take them home and use them on Mia. My stomach sank. How could he be so cruel to his only daughter? He also would burn her, beat her, she continued, which only pulled me to the present. It's all horrible. That man should have been banished for his crimes, Sam growled, his wolf trying not to come out to the surface. I think Alpha Robert was trying to save him, Gwen stated and let out a sigh. But we all know that there will be no going back for him with Mia or you, Emma. I stared at her for a moment before my eyes averted to my lap, not wanting to look at either of them. It was hard to even consider doing something to Dived. I still had the mate bond with him, even though love had gone the moment he put his hands on me. Lynx growled and agreed. Wolves were never one to upset the balance when it came to our mates, but I believe me and Lynx were the exception. No one should ever put up with what I did or get away with it. Surely our moon goddess has a heart of gold and would look out for us, even believe in our choices. Emma, Gwen said, making me look at her. Wetness had coated my cheeks, which meant I was crying. There was no emotion for my tears, just the realization that I was free from what I went through. Not many people are that lucky to get away. But I was. Yeah, I went back to my family pack, but I have never felt safer. Talking about him isn't easy for me. You both know that, I said, looking between them before I looked down again. David not only did a number of Mia, but me also. I never thought I would survive, but I did. You both see my injuries. Neither uttered a word. Finding my voice and telling them exactly what I thought. I agree, he should have been banished, or better yet killed, for what he did, but we all know, especially the three of us, that would never have happened. David and Robert were childhood friends for years. No one would ever get involved in their world. The stories I heard when we would all meet up about them and what they got up to would make all four of us laugh, I stated, letting the shudder of the memory come over me. I didn't even want to think about David, let alone Maria. Neither of them was worth my time. Not now. Do you think Alpha Robert would welcome him back to the pack with open arms? Sam asked, which made me look at him. That I can't answer, I said with a sigh. Robert would say things and do them, but now it is hard to figure out what to say now since seeing her 2 weeks ago. Sam and Gwen nodded. I know the plan is in motion, and we are still waiting for more confirmation from Robert about when we should be invited to the pack to help, I said, keeping my voice even. But if David is there, both Mia will break unless she can get over what he did, which is not easy to do since he is her father. What man does what he did? Neither of them spoke, but the anger was there, staring at them for a moment till I was ready to speak. That man tore me and our daughter down, his treatment and torture to sleeping with other women. If he ever had an announcement of respect or love for me, he would have never been like that, I said, but let out a slight laugh. He would have been like Alpha Robert was, heartbroken, but that was not David. You are still a pretty woman in front of him, and he will do her. Actually, a pretty woman with 3 bottles of bourbon, and he was good to go. Emma, I know this is hard. It was, I said, looking at my brother whose face softened. But it did happen. The man needs a harsh dose of reality, and I, for one, would like to see the man so I can finally do what I always wanted, reject him. Those 2 words made them both look at me shocked. I have never brought up the fact I wanted to reject David, but looking at how strong our daughter is now after everything she has been through, I want to get my life back. Taking a few breaths, I stood and looked between them both. I don't want to talk about him anymore. I want to collect my son. Looking at my brother, I gave him a smile. Maybe Mia and I should train again today. We need to get it out of our system. Sam nodded. Giving them both a nod, I turned and left the office. There was no point telling them that I was feeling everything. Just like Mia, but I was only barely holding on by a thread. All I needed right now was to get Ryland and then head to train with Mia. MIA. Lila ran for what felt like hours till we stopped at the forest line near the cafe. Lila sat on her hind legs and stared at the place. I could feel the tiredness kicking in with her, but she didn't force me to shift. I was happy staying in her head. My thoughts raced, but there was nothing to think about, especially when it came to my father. Father was not the name I would call him now. His name was David, a man who tortured me and beat me to an inch of my life countless times. Part of me wondered what would happen if I ever saw him again. Now I was gaining strength and even finding more of myself while being here. There was no need for me to go back, but my uncle had mentioned a few times I should face my fears and face what happened. Surprise those who blamed me, tore me down, and even made me question my own values. There was a need to do it, to prove myself, but I also knew I wasn't ready. A few more weeks, maybe, but I had to battle my own fate and do what I believe is right for me. Lila let out a sigh, which pulled me back to her. Her eyes were on me, full of love and concern. "I'm fine, Lila," I said with a smile. She knew I was telling the truth. She could feel it within me. "I know," she said, but let out a huff. "You need to stop putting yourself down. Mia, you are stronger than ever now, and it shows in training." I said nothing, knowing she was right, but I needed some kind of confidence boost. Lila went to speak again when I heard Sasha call out, "Mia! Lila!" Sasha came on a run with us, but gave up halfway through. She and her wolf couldn't keep up and mentioned that they would meet us by the cafe. Lila looked back while coming forward to see. There she was, walking toward us with something in her hand, clothes. "Let me take over," I said to Lila, who was happy to let me take the reins. She pushed me back, letting me shift back. Shifting back, I stood naked when Sasha handed a dress to me. "Here." She smiled while handing over the dress. Grabbing it, I placed it over my head and let it fall to my mid-thighs. "Your mother picked up Ryland an hour ago. She mentioned doing more training with her and your uncle, but when you didn't show up, they canceled it." Thank the goddess. I don't think Lila could train now. Not after the run. Keeping quiet, I looked back to see what Lila was doing, and sure enough, she was asleep in my head. Her soft snores could be heard echoing. A smile pulled the corner of my lips up slightly and looked back at Sasha, who was looking ahead. "I don't think training is on the cards this evening. Lila wore herself out with the run." Sasha smiled. "I assumed so I told Alpha Sam. He wanted me to tell you that you have 3 training sessions tomorrow." I groaned, which only made her laugh. We walked back toward the cafe, where my grandmother and grandfather were standing outside, watching us. As we got closer, my grandmother smiled. "Mia, Sasha, come on in, have some food with us." At the mere mention of food, my stomach let out a growl which made everyone laugh. "Well, Mia will be staying, but I have to leave. I am sorry, but I want to see Gwen and have some time with her." Looking at my friend, I didn't want her to leave, but I couldn't make her stay. Sasha hugged me and left. Once she was out of sight, I looked back at my grandparents and smiled. We walked inside and went into the back of the cafe where my grandmother had already put on a spread. I took a seat while my grandparents sat on either side of me. We ate, talking about training and my run. There was no mention of what I spoke about earlier in the day with my mother, uncle, Gwen, and Sasha. Neither of them brought it up. I made a second helping of food when my grandmother said she was going to do some laundry, which meant I was left with my grandfather. My grandfather leaned back in his chair and looked at me. "While you eat, I want to discuss your wolf with you." I placed the spoon in my bowl and looked at him. "What is there to know?" I asked, my head to the side. There was nothing in the books in the library. My grandfather stared at me with a smile. "Well, what I am about to tell you is more about how the women in our family are blessed to have a werewolf like the moon goddess." My eyes widened. "What do you mean?" My grandfather motioned to my bowl. "Eat and I will tell you." I did as he asked and ate while he began our family story. 2 generations ago, your great-great-grandparents couldn't conceive a child," he said, looking deep in thought. "They had prayed to the moon goddess for help, but nothing came. During that time, there was an epic war between 3 packs. It was a bloodbath, and one that was in one of those books you have read." I stared at him, wondering if he wanted me to agree, but I didn't. There were loads about different wars this pack had been in, but there were far too many to read of. Well, the war was going on. Your great-great-grandmother was beside herself with worry and looked after everyone until a wolf of the war had come to the pack and wanted revenge. She had mind-linked your great-great-grandfather, and he came back, but he was too far in the field where the war was taking place. When he did manage to get there, he couldn't find his mate, which was hell to any wolf, but when he did, she was sliced and barely breathing. I had finished my food and even placed my spoon in the bowl. While my grandfather was talking, my grandmother came in, sat down, and started to listen to the story. Your great-great-grandfather told her to the pack hospital and waited. He kept praying to the moon goddess to save her, and after what must have been an entirety, she survived. When he went to see her, the doctor stated she was safe and well, but needed to have help to get around until she was fully healed. Which is what he did, my grandmother said, making me look at her with a smile. Men in our family like to drag a story on. The corners of my lips curled up slightly at the little growl that came from my grandfather at her words, but smiled. How about you finish the story then, my love? My grandmother smiled and looked at me. Your great-great-grandmother survived and was on the mend, but there was one thing different. She found out she was pregnant, which came as a shock to them. But they took it as a sign from the moon goddess herself that she was listening to their prayers. Some people think she didn't allow them to have a baby until the war was done. That would make a lot of sense. They prepared for the baby and had a daughter, who they loved. They doted on her till she had her wolf and shifted into a white wolf, she said, which made me nod. My grandmother looked toward my grandfather and nodded, which was for him to take over the story. The story my own father told me, and what I told your uncle and mother is, the moon goddess came to them in a dream telling them for all the pain and suffering they had endured over the years, with wars and power struggles. It was stated that the moon goddess had many prayers to answer, but most were about gaining more power. But with our family, it was to have a family. She observed them carefully, assessing the nature of each wolf and noting their characteristics with interest. She wanted to grant them her image, but would only happen to all the women in the family line. But each woman would go through something to gain the respect of the moon goddess. I was stunned into silence. Your great-great-mother couldn't have children and was even willing to sacrifice her life to protect her pack and mate, my grandmother said, her face full of emotion. Another ancestor went through to losing her mate while being pregnant, brought up twins, a boy and a girl. And you? I asked, staring at her. It was all making sense now. My mother and I went through all hell in our old pack at the hands of my father and even pack. My grandmother looked down slightly, but it was my grandfather who spoke. She was held captive by a rogue and was tortured. His voice was full of venom. My eyes went to my grandmother, just when a lone tear escaped. There was a story there, but I didn't want to push. I won't ask, I whispered, making them both look at me. I know what it is like to be tortured. Looking at my grandfather, whose eyes softened. Mia, the white wolf is a symbol to all the women in this family. No one would ever go through stuff like you will, and having a white wolf is something the moon goddess has given you to show the strength you have. Those words rolled around my head. After what happened earlier, and hearing this story, my mind seemed to have shifted into focus and has given me the power to fight to get better and even face my demons. Looking at my grandmother and leaning toward her, I placed my hand in hers and smiled. We all have had a fight to conquer, I said, which made me smile. Now we all must learn to fight and be free. Words to live by, she said, giving me a look. Those words were, and I was planning on using them till I needed to leave. Shaking my head, I looked at my grandparents. Can I stay with you guys tonight? Both smiled and nodded. Sure, they said together and looked at each other till my grandmother looked back at me. Your mother and Ryland are coming here too. Sleep over with all the family. What do you say? I grinned. Perfect. Aiden, there has been a lot going on here for the last 2 weeks. Darren has now fully mated and marked Ellie as his mate. They are so happy together. Sarah finally came out as a lesbian and found her mate, but to my surprise, it was Amber. They are very much in love. Lee still hasn't found his mate. As for me, I am mates with Chloe, which is one fat lie we have made. Making it official was my own plan, something that happened. I mentioned to Darren and Lee what was happening, but we had a different plan altogether. It all changed when I saw her by herself, and I called out mate. It surprised her, you could tell, but she quickly recovered and ran up to me, kissing my lips like it was her last. As much as Jake growled in my head, I placed a block on him. There was no need for him to be like this. We needed to get closer to her, and this was the only way. Ever since then, we have been together. I have backed away a few times, only mentioning to her my father has given me more responsibilities that will lead me to being alpha. When I mentioned that, she was happy, even telling me she could help. Often I turned her down, but sometimes it was hard. She seemed eager, which was setting alarm bells off within. As for being with her intimately, that was not even the case. It was like she had changed. A few days ago, she left the pack to do some shopping, but didn't come back for 3 days. Pretending to be the doting maid I was, I often asked where she was, but she would brush me off, telling me she was with some friends. The only problem with that was all her friends we knew of were in the pack. So I didn't know what friends she meant. Outsiders? Rogues? It was hard to tell. When she came back she acted like normal. All affectionate and kissing me, which often made me sick. How weird the tables have turned now. I would have had her, but lately, every time I have been with her, she makes my skin crawl, or I want to throw up. A shiver rippled over me, which brought me back to the present and looked at the rubble before me. Ever since I made the decision to be Chloe's mate, I often found myself going for long walks or even letting Jake take over. But there was always one thing that always happened. We always end at the same spot, Mia's old cabin, the one she was burned alive in. I don't know how many times I have gone back to the cabin site. Ever since that night, no one has touched a single thing. No one else have been out here, but us. Often my friends would know, but they only came to collect me and bring me back to the pack house. Darren would stay for a few minutes. His face would be all blank. Like me, he was probably thinking of all the memories he shared with Mia. The only problem with remembering Mia was all the hurt I had caused her. There was something about the way this all went down that bothered me. I was close with Mia. We were close friends, and even started dating. When we were growing up, I always fancied her, but we never went physical when we were together. She always stated that she wanted her first time to be with her mate, and I respected that. Not all the wolves were and Mia was never one of them. We would kiss mostly, which would send me and my wolf into a frenzy. She was hot. But that all changed when Chloe came along. Everything changed, what seemed overnight. Chloe took Mia's place. Mia was pushed out like an outcast. The memories of what we were like to her back then all came flooding back. Some horrible antics too were displayed. Back before Chloe came, I would have never thought of doing anything so horrible to Mia. Hell, I would defend her to the end, like she was my dying breath. For the last 2 weeks, everything has been changing. I have been changing. It is like a switch has been flipped and taken the covering off my eyes, but it is all still fuzzy as to how I changed. The more I think about Mia and being back near the cabin, the more nothing makes sense. My head starts to hurt when I go back, but it all seems to be like a block that was created, and I don't know how to move it. Jake feels the same way, only he has no reclusion about what I did to her, not even the creation we gave to Mia. To him, I may have put a block on him, or something was clouding his judgment too, but there was no way we knew what was happening. A mind link came through from Darren. "Where are you? Where do you think?" My mind closed, leaving me to my thoughts once again. I have been back to the rubble site more in the last 2 weeks. Often I would be here for hours trying to piece together everything, and other times I would be thinking about Chloe's next move, which hasn't happened yet. Chloe hasn't left the pack since her 3 days away from the pack. She has been trying to muzzle in my alpha duties. They are the same duties my father had given me before, which hasn't changed. I wasn't going to tell her. My alpha duties included finding out what she was doing. I was making sure I never let anything slip out, only keeping to the basics. A branch snapped behind me and footsteps came. More than one, I could tell. Their scents wafted over me, which made me realize I had an audience. Darren, Ellie, and Lee stepped closer till they stopped. I knew they were looking at the rumble. Who wouldn't? Something tragic happened here, and it was all down to our stupidity. Dude, you need to get back. Lee's voice came out softly, but I ignored him. I said nothing and stared at the rumble while watching a rat run into it. Suddenly I heard movement, and someone came close, sitting next to me. Ellie. A low warning growl comes out, which I knew was from Darren. Ever since they have been mates, they have been inseparable, but he is very protective of her. I turned to look at Ellie, whose eyes were not on me but on her mate. She gave him a look that made him shut up, and then looked back at me. Aiden, she said softly, we know this is hard. Everyone here feels reasonable for what happened. I could feel the tension in the air at her words, but she continued. All I can say is, Mia is not coming back, Aid. She is gone. What you are feeling is guilt, and lots of it. Every one of us does, but the only way we can help her is to find out what happened to her. After the fire was gone, we brought in a professional to see what happened to the cabin. My father had orchestrated the whole thing since he wanted to make sure there was no foul play. When I heard those words come out of his mouth, it made my stomach drop, and wondering who would have wanted Mia killed. The problem with that statement was, there were loads. Even though Mia had changed too, the night her mother left, to be exact, we all went in one direction, while she became closed off and distant. We weren't the only ones who had changed. Aiden. Saying nothing, I looked back at the cabin. Ellie let out a sigh, but Darren stepped in front of my view, which made me look up at him. His face was full of emotion, but it was hard to tell what. Anger starts to erupt inside me. This is a go-to for him. He pretends to be thinking about nothing, but he lashes out at me, blaming me for the treatment of everything. When he thinks like that, it pisses me off since he was one of us who did the most damage to Mia, with Lee and Sarah following him, and Chloe. Toward the end of her treatment, I took a step back and watched it all unfold. Everything was f***ed up when you think about it, but we would never have acted like that in a million years. Besides coming here to think, which is all I could do here, especially when I can't sleep. Chloe and I didn't share a bed, much to her disagreement. I told her my father wanted me to be up early for alpha training in the morning, which would often be met with her agreeing and heading back to her room. While she was in her room, I would often head to the library since, ever since the fire, I haven't slept tidy. Nightmares occupied my sleep, reflecting on the treatment Mia received from Chloe. At times I questioned their reality, but soon recognized they were real, often waking up in a cold sweat. Going to the library, I needed a place to think and didn't want to come here. So, heading there was one of the places Mia would frequent before things changed. She loved to read and would often be found here with her head in a book. I would watch her bit her lip at something she was reading, but would flush slightly when she was caught. I never once asked her what she was reading, but I knew what it entailed after picking up the book and skimming through some chapters. Once I was there, I investigated everything I could think of about missing memories or even something that could explain what happened to me. There were few things, mostly magic, but I didn't know where Chloe would have found a witch. Night, only to find they were taken out by someone. There was no idea who would have taken them, since there was no one here when I was here the last time. All pack members were in bed. Movement in my head brought me to the present when Jake stepped closer and looked through my eyes. His eyes were on Darren, who seems to be slightly pissed. Jake growls lowly while I stared at my friend. "We need to," he starts, but I let out a growl which cut him off. "Look, I needed a break from all the lies we are saying. It gets to me. My eyes going to the rumble. I come here to think. Somehow being here is like being closer to her somehow." "Oh, will you shut up, Aid?" Ellie shouts, which makes her move away from me and glared. "If Mia was here, she would never come back," she gritted. Those words hit me hard, somehow. "Not after everything what everyone put her through," Darren said, finishing of his mate's sentence. My eyes went back to his, which made me snarl at him, but Ellie places her hand on my shoulder, making me look back at her. He is right, Aid. After what we all did to her, she would never come back. Luckily she is dead then, I said, getting up quickly. Those words were the worst to come out of my mouth. I didn't want to believe them, but no one could survive that. While those words slipped out, I could feel the hurt in my heart when I say that I wanted to hope that she was alive, but it has been 2 weeks since the fire and no one has matched the description on Mia anywhere. Yes, I have looked. Because of morning coming the next day, I had to leave the books I found and come back the next. I stood up and looked at my friends. Where is Sarah and Amber? Lee and Darren scowled, but Ellie looked at me with anger in her eyes, which meant something happened. What? I asked, looking slightly confused at them. Chloe called them into her room. They are helping her decide on a dress for your date, she said with a hint of venom slipping out. I groaned. Chloe mentioned we hadn't been spending time together these last few days and wanted to do something. I told her I would find free time, but I never did. All I know is that she came into my room and told me she set a date for us in the town, which only made my stomach churn at her words. I didn't want to go, but I had no choice, as I had to be a mate to her, even though I want nothing to do with her. Why did I agree to the date? Well, you decided to pretend that she is your mate, Lee stated, giving me a knowing look. Well, maybe we can figure out something like more training to do. Someone needs our help or something. I need to get out of it. Her scent is driving me and my wolf nuts, I grumbled. Ever since Mia had gone, the cloud that had been over my eyes had been lifted. I don't know if it is to do with not being around Chloe or that I am fighting for something, but over the last 2 weeks my mind has become clearer. We can come up with something, Lee said with a smirk. I didn't like that look. Often he would suggest stupid ideas that would often have me freaking out. Shaking my thoughts away, I let out a sigh and looked between my friends again. Let's get going, I said with a slight huff, but then a thought slipped through my mind. By the way, is my father back? And did you find out where that meeting was after? I asked, looking toward Darren, who was looking into it. My father has been acting secretly lately, more than usual. Instead of being locked in his room, he is now in his office and going to secret meetings. I started to notice his behavior. I knew I had to ask, and all I got was it was alpha business, and no need to tell me. That part caught me off guard since I asked for more responsibilities within the pack. I should know if something was happening, I could help. Darren looked back at me and shrugged. I asked around if there was something going on like a meeting or something, but nothing. No alphas went. Wherever he went was not a alpha's meeting. So my father lied to me, well, to us all. Anger rippled through me. I hated being lied to. Looking back at him, I get my composure and asked him something else. What about Beta David? Does anyone know where he went? I asked. Ever since that scene in the office with me and Dad, no one has seen him. It is like he has dropped off the face of the earth. Lee shook his head. Nope, not a peep. No one knows anything. All his things are still in his room in the pack house. Nothing was taken. It looks like he did a vanishing act. I was getting more pissed. Something is going on here, and we need to find out. I growled in frustration, but I was cut off by a very loud squeaky voice coming through the mind link that just opened, which made my eyes roll into the back of my head. Chloe? Hey baby, I need to cancel our date, Chloe blurted, which made me go right. What? She was canceling our date. My eyes went to my friends when we came to a stop. Oh, why baby? I thought we were going to be spending some time as mates. The mere thought of those pretend words leaving my mouth was even enough to make me sick to my stomach. All 3 of my friends look back at me, but Ellie looks like she is in a mind-link conversation with herself until she comes back to me with a big smile. She sticks her thumbs up to me with her eyebrows raised. I know, baby, Chloe's words echoed in my head, but we can do it another night. I bought something nice to wear for the date. She sounded a little bit so happy. Where the hell was she going? Where have you got to go? Oh, an old friend reached out to me and told me they were in town. They wanted to meet up for a catch-up. I haven't seen them in years, and she asked me if we could meet up since she is only here for this evening. I was hoping you wouldn't mind me going. It has been so long since I have seen my friend. Is it okay if I meet her, baby? She asked. Yeah, That's fine, babe. I will see you later. Oh, baby, I won't be back till late, she said with a squeal. Chloe closed the mind link before I could say anything else, which only made me look to my friends, but before I could ask them anything, Ellie spoke. Apparently, Chloe received a text about 15 minutes ago. She rang the number and was on the phone with them for a while. Sarah said that she was angry that she had to go, but when she came out, she acted like she missed this person so much. Ellie said with a frown. Amber swears she heard a man's voice on the other end of the call but couldn't make out what they were saying since Chloe closed the door tight. Well, that is new to us. We needed to find out who she was meeting. I explained what she told me. She told me she was meeting a friend at the town. But she'd be back later, I said, but feeling slightly relieved that I don't have to go anywhere with her. Should we have someone follow her? Lee asked, which only made me nod. Send Danielle there, her mate too. Tell them they are going on a date on me, but they need to watch her, but not to close, as she mustn't feel like she is being followed or watched. Lee mind links Danielle and her mate Rex to tell them what they have to do. Our little group has grown in 2 weeks. We learned who we could trust, and it seems everyone has their own suspicion about Chloe and her dealings. After a few seconds, Lee stared back and smiled. They are excited to help. Let's go to the office, I stated. We can discuss more and not in the open. We still don't know who is working for her. They nodded and all turned to head back to the pack house. But when we got closer to the pack house, we could see clearing Chloe in her car, speeding away. Danielle and Rex looked at us and shifted into their wolves to follow her. A bag strapped to Rex's leg as they bolted into the forest to follow Chloe. We walked towards the office, but it wasn't the one my father uses. Like I said, he has been acting all cagey for the last couple of weeks. I looked around the pack house and found a room no one was using, so I made it into an office which is not far from my father's office. We all meet up in here to have our own private meetings. I made sure the room was soundproofed too, so no one can hear anything that has been said in the room. We discuss what is happening around here, especially with my father and Chloe. Chloe thinks that the room was given to me by my father to start taking over the pack, which she seemed all too happy about. All we need to do now is wait for Danielle and Rex to tell us what she is up to, and then we can put a plan in motion. Alpha Robert. Leaning back in my chair, I stared at the phone. Over the last 2 weeks, Alpha Sam and I have been working alongside each other to deal with all the stuff that has been happening with my pack. He had Gwen come back to spend some time here, but we kept her being here a secret. I didn't want anyone to know, especially Chloe and her mother. We went over everything until the one conversation I had avoided came up: David, Mia's father, and Emma's mother. After the outburst in the office with Aiden, I knew I had to do something. Being my beta, and after everything he did, I still helped him. He was once my friend, even if I wanted to kill him for what he did. I knew I had to make him see all the shit he had done. Placing him in rehab was hard. He fought with me all the way, calling me all the names under the sun till some guards dragged him away. I knew it was because of drink. I made him sleep it off in my room after that confrontation, but when I woke up, he had downed a bottle of bourbon and was on the second one when I woke up. Taking the drink off him, I used my alpha aura to subdue him and got him out. The rehab is on my speed dial, and no, he is not to leave till he hasn't had a drink. They ring me twice a day, giving me updates on his condition. So far, he has been going through the steps and is hell-bent on talking about everything. Being that therapy is confidential, I am going to let it slide with what he is telling them, but it is taking every ounce of control not to ask. I wanted to know what started all this. Why would my friend become so cruel to his mate and daughter? There was clearly no going back with Emma and Mia, but at least he could suffer the consequences of his actions and maybe show he is worth a second chance. But it is all up to him. For the last few days, I have heard that Aiden and his friends have been asking where Beta David is, but no one knows, only a few select few. While Gwen was here, we overheard a little announcement my son made. Chloe and he were mates, which came as a shock to us since it had been a good few days since his birthday. Surely he would have known if she was. Gwen commented on how it all happened and mentioned it may be a setup on Aiden's part. If so, then why not tell me? He's my son and I am his alpha. I should know if something is wrong. While Gwen has been here, she has only been at the office when everyone was asleep. I have met her around the back, but she left before the sun came up. She was staying in the motel with her mate, Troy, and some of the other wolves who were on alert just in case anything else happened. A few times, Gwen did manage to walk around the pack, undetected, to look around, and even managed to look around the pack borders to see if there was something to report. The only thing she reported was footprints leading to a spot. It looked like someone had frequently been there, and there seemed to be about 3 or more people there at a time with the footprints. Glancing at the photos Gwen had left me of them, I knew I had to talk to Aiden and his band of merry men. He seemed to have gained a following of people who cared about him and who had his back, which is good to have when you become alpha. There was some lingering doubt about Aiden becoming alpha, and with Chloe being the main person of interest in everything, alongside her mother, I don't think I can let him carry on. Heaving a sigh, I waited for a moment, and I knew he would be back soon. I noticed Darren, his mate, and Lee wandering into the forest a while ago. Getting out of the chair, I walked over to the window to see Aiden stepping out of the forest, but stopping at the clearing with his friends. They were looking at something, which made me look down and notice Chloe was all dolled up and walking to her car. Where the f*** was she going? I watched on as she sped away, but it wasn't the car that stole my attention. A couple were looking at where she was looking, and as soon as her car was out of sight, they both shifted and followed after her car. My eyes went to my son, who was now walking back to the pack house. What was my son up to? Was this done? By the time they came closer to the pack house, I took a step back, not wanting Aiden to see me. As much as I love my son, but he was thinking more with his duck than with his head. Looking over my shoulder, my eyes went to the desk where the photos were lying all out. There had been a part of me that wanted Aiden to see what had happened to Mia, make him feel guilt for what he had done to her. That was when Gwen had printed the photos off first and handed them to me. All her scars, some old and some new. There were some different markings all over, which made me wonder what David or Chloe had used on her. My heart broke when I saw the photos. I wanted to shame my son and his friends, banish them, or even make them pay for what happened. But while I was still pissed at him for what he had done, I was about to confront him when I noticed how tired Aiden had been over time. It looked like he hadn't been sleeping at all, and one night, he left his room and went to the library. That was never Aiden. He could sleep through anything. I remember following him, and not once did he notice I did. He had to be that tired to not smell my scent. Aiden would read books till he looked like he was about to fall asleep. When he left, I walked in and looked at the books he had been reading, and was stunned to see ones on magic. Why would he need to know about magic? Nothing was adding up. I didn't take the books the first time. I waited again, and sure enough, the second night it happened again, and this time he had taken a notepad with him. He jotted down notes. Waiting patiently, I watched him until he scrunched up a piece of paper and leave. I went over and grabbed it while reading over it. It seemed my son was looking into spells that could be used on wolves. Over the last 2 weeks, there had been some talks between Alpha Sam and I about magic being used, since his Luna mentioned Josephine may be working with, but we didn't have no proof. Shaking my head, I turned around and looked at the photos while I took a few steps toward them. Judging on what my son has been doing, there seemed to be something I'm currently missing. Talking to him will be the key, but first I need to give him and his friends some harsh reality checks about what it is like to torment someone who was being tortured by her own father. They need to see what it all entails, and the photos was the key. Grabbing them, I tidied them up and placed them in a pile. Knowing Aiden, he would be in his new office. He brought it up to me over food the other day that he wanted his own office area, and I agreed since he was taking charge of what he wants, and it is beginning to show, even though I don't like the thought of Chloe being our next Luna. That would be over my dead body. Knowing what's next, I had to do, but before I could do anything, a mind link opened from Lola. Alpha, I am heading to the young Alpha Aiden's office. He wants to know more about Beta David. I let out a sigh, knowing this was part of the plan. Tell them what you know, I muttered. I will see you later, and Lola, tell them the truth. I will be in to see them once you are done. It is about time I put my son in his place for what he did. The link went dead, and all I had to do was wait for my turn. This was all about to blow up, and especially since I have known for weeks